Well, welcome to the Speak with People podcast. My name is Jason Raitz, and I'm so excited you are joining us today. Whether you communicate one-on-one, from a stage to a team, or from behind a screen, this podcast exists to inspire you, encourage you, challenge you to become a healthy communicator. We really believe that healthy communication is oxygen, and when you grab hold of communicating in healthy ways, you really will change your world for the better. Well, today I'm so excited because we start a brand new series on the Speak with People podcast called Speaking from Behind a Screen. I don't know if you've noticed, but more and more communication in 2023 is communicating from behind a screen, whether a phone, a camera, your computer screen with your webcam. And so how do I communicate online effectively? Communicating is already crazy enough, but now we've got to learn how to communicate in healthy ways from behind a screen. And technology is just going to keep advancing, and we're going to be communicating more and more from our screens. So can anyone truly speak with people across screens? And more specifically, can anyone build an online platform to share stories and build influence and draw people together to build businesses? Well, the answer to those questions will probably surprise you. And we're going to do this series for 4 weeks, and I hope that you'll join in each week as we dive into a different topic. Well, today, though, we're going to dive into this idea of building online platforms and how to draw people together around a common message. And I'm so geeked. We just talked offline for probably 20 minutes. We could probably talk all day because I've just admired our guest for years. I've followed his YouTube channel. I mean, literally, my kids know his voice because his YouTube channel has been on our TV so much in our home. I just want to really welcome Lane Sebring to the Speak with People podcast. Thanks for being here, Lane.
Jason, man, thank you. Well, first of all, thanks for that intro. That's like the kindest intro that I've had so far this week. And really appreciate what you're doing. I love the vision of Speak with People. Love what you're doing this podcast. And I'm super pumped to get going.
Thank you. Well, hey, before we jump into this conversation, as we're going to talk about having our own space online and building, kind of our niche and our own platform, I'd love for you to tell our listeners just a little bit more about yourself, your story, who you are, your family, anything that you really want to share with us.
Yeah. So I'm married. My wife Rachel and I have been married for 12 years now. We have 4 kids, all girls, ages 8 and under, 8,
All
7,
right.
5, 3. And a golden retriever. So he's somewhere around here. He might pop in a minute. And we live in Florida, in the Northwest, Emerald Coast of Florida, if you're familiar with that part of Florida. And I was a pastor for 15 years. That was kind of what I did in my normal standard career. Felt a very strong calling to be a pastor. Did that with everything I had to give it. Along the way, I started my first brand, which was called Preaching Donkey. And we could talk about that. I don't know how far you want me to get down that path. But today what I do is I lead a coaching organization for pastors called Preaching Donkey, where I help pastors with their communication. And then I also have a personal brand that's just my name, Lane Sebring, where I help people build online businesses around their skills and passions. So between those two things and my family, that's about what I do and who I am.
I love it. And I have seen your golden retriever in some videos before. I mean, he no offense, he does steal the show sometimes. So take us back. Why did you originally get started with speaking behind screens, being online? What kind of got you over to that place?
Yeah, so it didn't start as a kind of face-to-camera YouTube channel, online courses situation. It really started as a blog way back in 2014. I read, well, if we back up even further, back to 2012, I read a book by Michael Hyatt called Platform.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
called How to Get Noticed and Annoyed. Do you remember that book?
Oh, yeah.
And he laid out kind of a path for how to develop a platform for anyone with something to say or sell. Now, it's interesting. So that's the subtitle of that book was anything for something this, how to do it if you have something to say or sell. And I remember being somewhat offended and intimidated by the idea of selling. I thought, no, that's not me. I don't want to sell. I do have something to say, So I'll build a platform, and it was a way to kind of scratch this itch of wanting to influence people. And this is before like influencer became a thing. It was more of like actual influence that I wanted to have. So I majored in communication in college, and then I went to seminary, which is like a master's program for pastors. I would imagine most people probably know that, but if you don't, it's a master's program for pastors. And I learned how to bore everyone with the Bible. So I had this kind of knowledge and training in how to actually connect and communicate with people from my undergrad. And then sermons and preaching were taught in such a clinical, stilted kind of, here's the way to make your seminary prof proud when you preach, but it didn't connect in a way that I felt was human. So I created Preaching Donkey really as I just started writing a blog post every Tuesday, putting it out, saying, here's my thoughts on how long should a sermon be, how to start a sermon, for maximum impact. Let's look at what this pastor is doing that's working. Let's look at what that pastor is doing that's working. And to my surprise, it started to grow. Back in those days, I was really growing it on Twitter. And I started to grow this following of people. It got syndicated to different places like, Sermon Central, church leaders, pastors.com reached out. And so all of a sudden, this little project that I never thought anybody would see became something that was starting to grow.
Yep.
And around that time, I started thinking, I really want to write a book. And a lot of people want to write a book because they have a message that they want to get out. For me, I wanted my name on a book. That's what I wanted. And so there was more to it than that. But
sure.
I'm Enneagram 3 and an ENTJ, and just, the performance aspect of like, look, that book, it has my name on it and people buy it. So that was something that I wanted. And it was also just kind of the challenge of like, okay, I didn't even like writing papers in high school or college, but could I write a 40,000 word book that people would actually find valuable? It's like a personal challenge and everything. So I wrote that first book, Preaching Killer Sermons. And to my surprise, yes, there it is.
There it is. I have it.
To my surprise, it became a #1 bestseller in its category on Amazon. And it stayed that way. I have several screenshots of where my book was #1, and then #2 was Communicating for a Change by Andy Stanley, and #3 was Preaching by Tim Keller. Now, granted, those books had been out a while, so it's not a fair comparison, but I still relished in that moment. And I can always now say that I'm an Amazon #1 bestseller.
Yep.
So what that did is it all of a sudden the little website that I had, the blog, it started to grow a lot more, a lot quicker. So at the same time, I started to think about like, okay, what else can I do? So I started a podcast with it. And then I wrote another book in 2019 called Become a Preaching Ninja. And so my path started to change. My mind started to change from just this experiment to I started to get into like the online business world, because I got over my hesitancy towards selling because I was a pastor. And as a pastor with a small family, you need other sources of income, especially now. This was true then. It's true especially now. It's very difficult to make ends meet unless you're the lead pastor of a mega church and you have a massive platform. Then, you know, if you're not making a lot of money, you're doing it wrong. But for most of us, we have, like we're just, nobody wants to feel like they're paying their pastor too much.
Right.
So most people solve that problem by paying them way less than they should. And so everybody's conscience is eased, but that guy really struggles. And so I started to think like, okay, how can I like make money on the side and still have this really high stress job that encompasses a lot of my life? And the way to solve that problem, it had to be passive. I had to figure out ways to use this brand to make money apart from my direct input of time. So this led me down a path of researching YouTube, taking courses, trying every possible thing. And everything I tried taught me something. Not everything had a direct correlation back to Preaching Donkey, but all of it kind of helped me understand, what do I like? What am I good at? Around this time, I went ahead and I started a YouTube channel, and I actually was hesitant about, so this is where the screens come in. So I'm finally answering your question. But where I was hesitant about YouTube for a long time. And the reason why was because I knew that at some point I wanted to make online courses where I was going to be on video. And I thought, well, if I have a YouTube channel where I'm teaching stuff on video, then who's going to buy my courses and why would they? And this was a complete misunderstanding. I did not understand the role that content plays in the process of selling and marketing your overall, product suite, your courses, your coaching, all that. YouTube ended up being the major catalyst, more than my book, more than my podcast, more than the blog. It was the thing that grew that brand, drove more people into my email list, and has resulted in way more revenue, because in 2019, I released my first course, Killer Sermons Academy, which is kind of like my first book, but supercharged and put into a holistic flagship course.
Yep.
Then I released another course in 2020 called, or 2021 called Preaching Jumpstart. Then I just released a third one called the Strategic Leadership Bundle. And I did a membership site for a while. I did it for a year, and we can get into that. I ended up killing it because I didn't like it for a few reasons, but it was like a ongoing coaching community that people could join.
Wow.
And so between those things, the courses and all that kind of stuff, and the coaching that I do with pastors, typically what that looks like is sermon evaluations. That's Preaching Donkey. And then in 2020 is when I started the brand that we're kind of interacting with right now, my personal brand, where I teach people. I kind of take the aggregate of everything I've learned, all the mistakes I've made, what's worked, what hasn't, and I share and help people along the way.
Wow. Man almighty. I mean, that's just incredible. What's it been like, though? I mean, just to see it kind of come to fruition. I mean, did you ever think 5 years ago, well, hey, we'll just, because I remember following your story online, not that I'm a stalker or anything, but I remember you guys got back from vacation and you're like, let's move to Florida. Did you ever in your wildest dreams see that it would come to fruition for where now you're building two successful brands, you have this online platform, and you're able to do these things and help other people?
Yes and no. Like, I remember the short answer is no, because there's always doubt. There was always this kind of like, but I remember watching like Pat Flynn of Smart Passive Income. And I was working at the time at a church in DC, great church, great people. But because I got to that church when I was 22 as like an assistant youth pastor, actually they called me an assistant youth director because I wasn't ordained yet. Then I got ordained, started glowing in the dark. They called me the youth pastor at that point. And then I became the next generation's pastor. And then I was the young adults pastor. Then I was the associate pastor. Well, I was there from 22 to 32. Because I was so young when I came in, my pay never caught up to the position I was in. So I was overseeing people who were making more than me. So it was a very frustrating experience. And I forgot what I was getting at with that. Something about something
seeing it come to fruition. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. So Pat Flynn. So I remember me and my brother-in-law would sit around and talk about Pat Flynn's income reports, because at the time he was doing these income reports every month where he's making $100,000 a month from Bluehost affiliate, and he's making $70,000 a month from podcast sponsorships. And I'm looking at that going, I'm barely making like $60,000 a year in DC, which was insanely expensive, and I had a family. And I'm just going, gosh, if there's a way for me to do this, I have to figure this out. Like I have to. And what I thought back then was, I'm going to be a pastor forever. That's a done deal. But I don't have to be a strapped to the wall financially struggling pastor. And I even thought, well, maybe one day I can get to the point where I can work for free.
Yep.
And I could just kind of make my money somewhere else.
Yep.
And so in some ways I did envision it, but you never know how it's going to turn out. So in June of 2020, COVID happened, March of 2020. Well, by June, we were starting to kind of go back to the office, go back to in-person services. I was working in Tennessee at the time at a multi-site church there. I was the executive pastor. I was going to have to take over one of our campuses because one of our campus pastors was leaving. And so I was going to have my role plus the campus pastor role, and no extra pay, which is kind of nice. And I'm not saying anything bad about them. I'm just saying that's just the way it always works. And so that right there was the point at which my wife and I said, this was 3 years ago, June of 2020, we said, now is the time. And I knew my kind of parameter was I can't be a campus pastor. I'm not built for that. There's way too much like caring for people. I know that sounds terrible, but it's just, I'm not wired that way to be like a pastoral presence in people's lives. Gosh, this sounds so terrible to say this out loud. It's not the way God wired me. I was great at like executive leadership, not so great at the kind of leading with the people. And so I knew at that moment, it's like, okay, it's now or never. Like if I play it safe and just stay here and do this job that I'm not really equipped for and probably will fail at, I can fake it till I make it and probably make it happen and just be miserable and poor.
Yeah.
Or I can take a risk.
Yep.
And that's what I did. I really felt like that was what the Lord was leading us to do. So that was June of 2020. This business, Preaching Donkey, and this business had just gotten started. It wasn't making any money. Preaching Donkey was making $1,800 a month, which is not enough to support a family of 5 at the time, and now 6. So we just said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And so I became very passionate about not starving to death. And so when you ask me, did you foresee being able to just up and move to Florida, travel when I want, have plenty of money coming in? My vision was, if I can just survive, that would be awesome. If I can just not go back to having a job and a boss and a schedule that's imposed on me by someone else, I'm as happy as a clam. Even if that meant just $60,000 a year and I just barely get by, if I'm free, then great.
Right.
And it's turned out to be way more than that. And the freedom has been, more than I could have imagined. So
I love that. And just being able to follow your journey and learn from your journey and learn from the videos that you do put up on your channels has been awesome. But let me just, let me sit in the seat of like the skeptic for a second. But really, can anybody do this? Like, how can anyone build an online platform or, go online and be able to, speak about, project their message? Is this something that literally anyone can do?
I think, I know most people would say, yes, absolutely. Not everybody wants to. Not everybody is going to have the desire and the passion. So there was a time where I would have said, yes, absolutely, everyone can. What I would say now is that anyone who wants to badly enough can. Yeah. There are no gatekeepers to this. No one cares enough about you to keep you from going after your goals. And so the biggest barrier that people have, well, 2 things. Number one, most people don't understand or recognize that they're actually really skilled at something, and that skill is unique to them. Not everybody shares that skill. I spend a lot of my time helping my clients and people who subscribe to me and follow me over at Lane Sebring. I help a lot of people try to understand, what do I know? What have I done? What are my experiences, my passions, my skills that are unique to me, that someone else would want to know, someone else would want to learn, someone else would benefit from.
Yep.
I'll tell you this, when I started Preaching Donkey, I almost didn't pull the trigger. And the reason why is because I went to Google and I looked for preaching resources. I knew about Preaching Rocket. They were huge.
Yep.
And Graham Casey's thing. And so I kind of set them aside, like, okay, that's a totally different category. I'm not even going to try to compete with them. But who else is out there? And I found a website called Pro Preacher. Ended up being a friend. His name is Brandon Hilgeman, lives in Phoenix. Great guy. But I remember going on his site and going, crap, someone's already done it. I can't do it. And I almost didn't pull the trigger on that first post because I thought the idea was already taken. What I didn't realize is that there are people who are going to resonate with Brandon over at Pro Preacher who are not going to resonate with me. But there's also people who are going to resonate with me who are not going to resonate with him. And there's people who are going to like us both. The point of it is, all of us have something to share. Yeah. All of us have a unique set of skills, experiences, and things to draw on. And so in the online space, really what it's about is developing a connection with your audience. And it's not just about sharing, here's how to do stuff. It's about sharing, here's Here's how I've done it. Here's how you can do it. It's about empowering people. It's about building rapport, that trifecta of know, like, and trust, where they know you, they like you, they trust you. And anyone can do that. And I've worked with people in a million different niches, people who train dogs that want to take that online and help people through online courses, people who used to be teachers that now want to tutor online, people who do homeschooling and they do it really well and they want to teach other people how to do homeschooling. I was talking to a therapist yesterday who got on Kajabi, and she's got a whole suite of courses for people who are kind of trying to fix parts of their life. Every possible thing you can imagine, people have done. Lawn care, anything. And the problem is, going back to your question, can anyone do this? I think the biggest thing is people need to recognize that they have a skill. The second biggest thing is they actually have to execute on their plans. Jason, this is the biggest issue. I think it is the biggest issue that keeps people from achieving their goals in anything, but especially in online business. It's having an idea and thinking about their idea and loving their idea and researching their idea and taking courses about their idea and telling their friends about their idea. And that's it. That idea turns into nothing because they do not sit down and actually put a website together, actually start making content, put a YouTube channel, learn how to do it, find the right coach. No one is going to do this for you. And I think it's easy for people to see someone like yourself. You got this beautiful setup with your podcast. You got this great team, this huge vision for what you're doing. And they think, oh man, it must be nice to be Jason, right? It must be nice to be Jason, right? Because you just have this beautiful setup where everything looks clean, and you got the bokeh effect behind you, where the books are faded, and I'm trying to pick out what are they, but I can't really tell because it's so professional. Well, you did that, right? You had to make that happen. Nobody did that for you, and if they did, it's because you led the process of making that happen. So I think when people want it badly enough and are willing to do the work and identify the skill that they have and avail themselves to the right resources, then yes, anyone can do it. Long answer to a simple question.
Oh, no, that's so good. You said so many things where I've just got things going off. I mean, I just read the other day, there's like 3.2 million podcasts and 90% of them didn't get past 20 episodes. So people just, they just give up and they just kind of go, wait a minute. I mean, I don't know how many times, it's happened to me. Just a really tiny, quick story. Sorry. But last week, I had a Facebook post on my personal page just blow up, for like a couple weeks beforehand. I'm crying to my team. They're laughing at me now about other things, but I'm crying to the team and I'm like, okay, my post not. And then all of a sudden one day, this post that I just legitimately just shared a quote from someone else. It was just an image. 325,000 impressions, 1,000 shares, hundreds of comments. I'm like, what just happened here? People just give up way too soon. And I love what you said about that, because that's the illusion about speaking from behind a screen, right? We think everything looks so great from behind the screen, but then if you get on the other side, I don't know, I'm in the season of, being a business owner where, I'm going to bed at night going, okay, like this many clients, this is what's going to happen. All these things are going to have to, happen. But let's transition then into you found your skill, you've got your niche, you've put it online. What are ways to get people to find you? How can you be found then, attract people and build your platform?
Yeah, so it's actually and I think I want to comment on one of the things you just said, because it actually helps to answer this question. That Facebook post that went viral, that got 300,000 impressions, 1,000 shares, had you not posted, it wouldn't have gone viral, correct?
Correct. Well,
right. Okay, and here's the thing. None of us can predict what goes viral and what doesn't, what gets traction and what doesn't. So the reach and the impact comes from the consistency and the system. If you have a system for developing content, and I don't know if that came from a system or if it was just a spur of the moment, but you have a habit of posting things, and some of them do really well and some of them don't, but it's the aggregate of everything. And I think the reason why a lot of people give up after 20 episodes or 20 videos is because number one, they didn't realize how much work it was going to be because it looks easy.
Right.
And number two, they were unwilling to accept that nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about you until you have proven that there's something that I was washing my car yesterday. I was listening to this book by Donald Miller called Marketing Made Simple.
Oh, yeah.
And great book. In this book, he said that basically people are trying to figure out how to survive and thrive in life. And they only care about you and your product and your brand to the extent that they realize it's going to help them do one of those two things, survive or thrive. So they don't care about your story. They don't care. And it's not that they're selfish. We're all this way. We're all like, it goes by way too fast. We can't pay attention to everything and everybody. And so we're looking for who's going to help me survive and thrive. So when it comes to like growing a platform, the way I did it was, at least the path that I've taken now is, I think YouTube, a combination of YouTube long form that also serves as a podcast, right? So, it's a video on YouTube, but you can take the audio and put it on a podcast as well. And then from that long form, breaking it down into short form content and sharing that. If you're going to do one thing, in most cases, YouTube is going to be YouTube long form. If you can't do anything else, if you're just getting started and you're just like, I have to start somewhere. The power of YouTube is that if you're doing content that helps people with a skill, which is usually what I'm helping people do, people that are going to eventually turn their content into courses and information products, YouTube is the best place, because people go to YouTube and they put in, how do I blank?
Right.
They're searching. Whereas TikTok, I love TikTok, but it's a passive experience. So if something comes on my For You page, I may or may not be in the space to even receive it. So there's some barriers that have to happen between going, scrolling on TikTok and then moving over and looking through that person's profile, then clicking on their link in bio, then getting their lead magnet. It's just a lot of steps.
Right.
Whereas on YouTube, it's like people have sought this out. And so the path that I take is content that always has a clear call to action. And this, by the way, is the biggest differentiator between my business not getting traction for a long time and now getting traction and converting a lot of leads. And it's, my content used to be dead end. What I mean by that, and this could be the case with a podcast, it could be the case with a YouTube channel, it could be the case with anything, where you finish the video and this is what I did for years, a couple years on Preaching Donkey. Hey everybody, thanks for watching today. See you in the next video, right? No call to action, no invitation for them to go deeper with me, just hope to see you back here, right? And the chances of somebody coming back to your YouTube channel or your website or whatever it's not a risk I'm willing to take. I want to invite that person to go further. Wow. So now, instead of dead end content, my content is bridge content. So the purpose of my content is to meet someone I want to be on the other end of whatever problem they have. They go to YouTube and they search, how do I make money online? Is passive income, does it work? Or on the Preaching Donkey side of things, I got a sermon to write. What do I do? How do I make a sermon outline? What are some ideas for sermon illustrations? I want them to find me. I want to help them solve that problem. And then I want to invite them to go even deeper with me, get on my email list through my lead magnet, which is another value add. I'm giving them something in exchange for that.
Yep.
And then from there, they're in a process where I can offer them even more help, paid content, things like that.
Yeah.
So I think your content has to be focused on how do I, and what I suggest that people do is take like the big niche that you have, right? Like not the big niche, but like, let's say the overarching kind of theme of what you do. So like in the case of Preaching Donkey, I help preachers with how to preach more effectively, more clearly. That's kind of the overarching theme. Within that, I have categories that make it simpler for me to like make content around this. So under that, I have like sermon preparation. That's a category, or I call it a bucket. Sermon delivery, right? So how I actually preach it, that's a bucket. Church leadership is another bucket, because preaching and leadership are very intertwined. You use one to do the other. So sermon prep, sermon delivery, church leadership. Then I have another bucket that's called lessons for pastors. And this is like if there's a scandal in a well-known church, if there's something that happens in this space that's newsworthy, I want to kind of give comment to that, and that helps to kind of grow my audience. I consider that discovery content. So when I sit down to plan, I'm looking at these 4 buckets and I'm saying, I need about 10 ideas for sermon prep. I need about 10 ideas for sermon delivery, 10 ideas on leadership. And then the lessons for pastors come as, you can't predict what scandal is going to break out. I just check Christianity Today every day and Relevant Magazine or whatever else. But what that does is it helps me so that my content every week is touching on another aspect of another angle of this. Mm-hmm. And so as people watch it, I'm inviting them to come into my email list, again, by offering something of value. And then from there, it goes where it goes.
My goodness. I shot for the stars a little bit in the content questions I sent you, because we're about halfway through and we've, used up the time that I told you we would be apart. So we definitely got to, figure out another podcast
we do
episode.
Part 2 or something.
Yeah,
sorry,
absolutely.
I get super long-winded in the stuff. So sorry.
No,
if
I love it though. I mean, I literally took a page and a half of notes because, this is just incredible. Just the last question, and then I'll ask you a couple of rapid fire and we'll close up. But as more and more people are learning to speak from behind screens, you keep learning, you're growing, you've done this now for a bunch of years. Do you have any advice for the brand new person as they're getting comfortable with speaking from behind a screen? Anything that you would tell them?
Well, 2 things. One, you just have to do it, and you're gonna be awful at first, unless you're just some kind of freak of nature where you just have this innate skill. I remember when I first started on YouTube, I would watch these YouTube videos that look amazing, that have, great backgrounds, great cameras, great sound. And I go, okay, I want to do that. And then I would set up what I thought was going to look like that and sound like that. And it was just awful. And I would think, why can't I produce something that looks like that? Well, then I just had to train myself. I had to, use things like Think Media and video creators and all the video influencers. Like, those are some of the channels that I went to and just said, okay, what mic should I buy? What camera should I buy? And over time, you get better technically, and you get better just learning how to look into a lens and imagine that it's a person you're talking to, right?
Yep.
And that's a skill that has to be developed. But I find that if you go to Preaching Donkey on YouTube, sort by oldest videos, watch the first few, you'll feel better about it, because they were absolutely horrible. I looked bad. I sounded bad. I was awkward on camera, but I pulled the trigger. And that's the thing. You just have to do it. Sean Cannell says your first videos are your worst videos. And he also says you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And I don't think I'm great by any means. I have a long way to go. And I really hope that a year from now, I'll look back on the videos that I'm putting out right now and I'll cringe, because I'll be so much better a year from now. And a year after that, you get the idea. Like, we're constantly improving. But I wasn't willing to accept a mediocre existence where I felt trapped in a job. And I remember I know that I don't want to go too late here, but I remember talking to a guy that I worked with at a church, and he was miserable, felt trapped. I was in my 20s. He was in his 40s, late 40s, 50s. And I remember him saying, like, gosh, I'm just miserable here. And I said, have you ever thought about just quitting or going somewhere else? And he goes, no, I can't. I have nowhere else to go. I don't know any other skills. I've never done anything else. This is what I've done for 35 years. He said, I'm just, and I remember as a 26-year-old thinking, not I. Like, I am going to learn. I'm going to learn something so that I'm not just at the whim of some, miserable boss that just happens to be in my that I happen to be subject to. So for me, the pain of putting out a video that's like not good, but doing it anyway, having things that I look back on that I'm kind of embarrassed about, reading comments from people who will say, the meanest stuff, the meanest stuff. None of it matters. I mean, none of it's enough to take this dream away from me, where I can, like you said, in a week, just say, we don't want to live in Tennessee anymore. Let's go live where we vacation.
Yep.
And we just did it.
Wow.
And I work as much or as little as I want. Last year I took all of July off, half of August, half of September, and all of December. So a collective like 3 months off. And because I can make my content in advance and I have a virtual assistant, and when I say off, I mean off. Like, I don't even think about my business. It's running out apart from me. And that's a level of freedom that you would never have for the most part in a 9-to-5. I'd never had that as a pastor. I would take 1 week off and feel guilty about it.
Yep.
Come back to a pile of work and a bunch of problems. And so I wouldn't trade this for any amount of, oh, this is hard, or oh, this is awkward, or oh, this feels cringy. I don't care. I don't care, because I'm going after something that's worth more than all those things.
Man, I love it. Okay. Before we let you go, let's do just a couple rapid fire questions, get our listeners to kind of keep going knowing you. But is there an online entrepreneur, a YouTuber, someone in your, neck of the woods that they just inspire you? Like they're who you're looking to and learning from?
Yeah. So Graham Cochran would be a huge one. He was one of the first people that I found that I had looked at a million people. Pat Flynn. I mean, so many names of people that you would know, people that are more obscure, and so many different models. But I found him and I was like, okay, this is doable. This is doable. So he's one. Of course, Pat Flynn was a huge person. Sonny Lenarduzzi back in the day. Tim Schmoyer of
Tim Schmoyer.
YouTube name. There was, and there's a shifting list of people. Right now, I would say Alex Hermosi is lighting up my world. Donald Miller. So there's just, I try to learn from a lot of different, Matt McWilliams when it comes to affiliate marketing. So there's a lot of people that I look to. Yeah, Jason Rates.
Well, thank you. And we'll put links to all those creators in there, because every single one. Is there a podcast right now that is just kind of your constant? You'd recommend this podcast to other leaders, other entrepreneurs?
I don't know about podcasts, because I'm way more into right now audiobooks and just YouTube. So anything Alex Hormozi puts out, I'm watching it on YouTube. But in terms of listening content, I've kind of just gotten out of the habit of podcasts, but there's certain ebooks that I've listened to multiple times, and like Marketing Made Simple, $100 million offers, the Millionaire Fast Lane. That's a great one. It's a little older, it's about 10 years old, but it's just, his whole thesis in that book is get rich quick is not as scammy as it sounds. Get rich easy is not possible. Get rich quick is definitely possible. And he talks about how people try to slow down the wealth building process and they miss out on where they could be really, really accelerating their wealth very quickly. So
I love it. Yeah. We'll make sure we link to all of those. And last question, you talked a little bit about in the beginning, but favorite family, thing so far about your move to Florida?
Honestly, and this sounds like so whatever, but we just love going to the beach, man. Like as much as we possibly can. We live 3 miles from it, and when the kids come home from school, sometimes we'll go on Sundays a lot with people from our church. After church, we'll go in the afternoon, or Saturdays. And we love all the beaches here. The beaches here have dune lakes that are attached to them, and there's this ecological kind of exchange between the water and the water. The sand is it's white sand because of all the quartz, and so it's white sand, this emerald green, bluish, clear water. It's delightful. I love everything about it. And a lot of people talk about, oh, you won't go to the beach if you live there. Well, so far we go.
I love it
quite a bit.
I love it. You have provided, just an amazing amount of such richness and wisdom and insight. I cannot thank you enough. Before I let you go, could you just point us to the best place where our listeners can find you online, resources, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so everything is at lanesebring.com. So Lane like a street, Sebring like the car, unfortunately. But it's a fine automobile. Michael Scott drove it, but
Michael Scott made it famous.
Yeah, lanesebring.com/super simple. So it's the super simple guide to your first $500 online. Kind of maps out everything that I've talked to, kind of puts it on paper for you and shows you first do this, then do this, then do this. Makes it simple. and it's a great place to start. So lanesebring.com/super simple.
I love it. Well, Lane, thank you again. So appreciate, so value your time. And to our listeners, especially if you are a pastor or a ministry director or a teacher, I really do highly recommend Lane's books. I have read them, used them, and if you are interested in, building an online platform, please do check out lanesebring.com. Again, thank you so much for being a regular part of the Speak with People podcast. Before you do go, I want to make sure you know about two things. The first is our community group. If you're looking to continue growing your communication, you want to know how to communicate better as a leader, go to our Facebook community group, Speak with People Community Group. Just go to facebook.com, type in Speak with People Community Group, and every single day there's a different post or an encouraging video or a poll where we're trying to curate information and help each other grow as communicators. And then if you want to continue growing your public speaking skills, I really do think coaching is one of the best ways to do that. We would love to come alongside of you and help you reach your goals as a public speaker. Just head to speakwithpeople.com/coaching, and you'll find all the information there about how we can partner together, and you can schedule a discovery call. Thanks again for being a part of the podcast. We're so appreciative of every single listen and share and review. Again, this podcast exists because our words matter, and we believe that healthy communication is oxygen to your relationships and your leadership. So whether you communicate one-on-one, to a team, from a stage, or from behind a screen, we really hope that you were inspired today to communicate in healthy ways, because you really can change your world with your words. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.